A doll's village, isn't it? No shortage of quaintness here. But I didn't bring you to this island for quaintness, cher ami. Anyone can show you peasant headdresses, wooden shoes, ornamented houses with fishermen smoking choice tobacco surrounded by the smell of furniture polish. I'm one of the few people, on the other hand, who can show you what really matters here. We're reaching the dike. We'll have to follow it to get as far as possible from these two charming houses. Please, let's sit down. Well, what do you think of it? Isn't it the most beautiful negative landscape? Just see on the left that pile of ashes they call a dune here. The grey dike on the left. The livid beach at our feet. And in front of us the sea looking like a weak lye solution, with the vast sky reflecting the colourless waters. A flabby hell indeed. Everything horizontal. No relief. Space is colourless and life dead. Is it not universal obliteration, everlasting nothingness made visible? No human beings. Above all, no human beings. You and I alone facing the planet at last deserted. The sky is alive? You're right, cher ami. It thickens, becomes concave, opens up air shafts and closes cloudy doors. Those are the doves. Haven't you noticed that the sky of Holland is filled with millions of doves? Invisible because of their altitude, which flap their wings, rise or fall in unison, filling the heavenly space with dense multitudes of greyish feathers carried hither and thither by the wind. The doves wait up there all year round. They wheel above the earth, look down, would like to come down, but there is nothing but the sea and the canals, roofs covered with shop signs, and never a head on which to alight. You don't understand what I mean. I'll grant you I'm tired. I lose the thread of what I'm saying. I've lost that lucidity to which my friends used to enjoy paying respects. I say my friends, moreover, as a matter of principle. I have no more friends. I have nothing but accomplices. To make up for this, their number has increased. They are the whole human race. And within the human race, you first of all. Whoever is at hand is always the first. How do I know I have no friends? It's very easy. I discovered it the day I thought of killing myself to play a trick on them, to punish them, in a way. But punish whom? Some would be surprised. No one would feel punished. I realised I had no friends. Besides, even if I had, I shouldn't be any better off. If I'd been able to commit suicide and then see their reaction, why, then the game would have been worth the candle. But the earth is dark, cher ami, the coffin thick and the shroud opaque. The eyes of the soul, to be sure, if there is a soul and it has eyes. But you see, we're not sure. We can't be sure. Otherwise there would be a solution. At least one could get oneself taken seriously. Men are never convinced of your reasons, of your sincerity, of the seriousness of your sufferings, except by your death. So long as you're alive, your case is doubtful. You have a right only to their scepticism. So if there were the least certainty that one could enjoy the show, it would be worth proving to them what they are unwilling to believe, and thus amazing them. But you kill yourself, and what does it matter whether or not they believe you? You are not there to see their amazement and their contrition, fleeting at best. To witness, such is every man's dream, your own funeral. In order to cease being a doubtful case, one has to cease being, that's all. Besides, isn't it better thus? We'd suffer too much from their indifference. You'll pay for this, a daughter said to her father, who had prevented her from marrying too smart a suitor, and she killed herself. But the father paid for nothing. He loved fly fishing. 3 Sundays later he went back to the river to forget, as he said. He was right, he forgot. To tell the truth, the contrary would have been surprising. You think you're dying to punish your wife, and actually you're setting her free. It's better not to see that. Apart from the fact that you might hear the reasons they give for your action. As far as I'm concerned, I can hear them now. He killed himself because he couldn't bear... cher me, how poor an invention men are. They always think one commits suicide for a reason. But it's quite possible to commit suicide for 2 reasons. No, that never occurs to them. So what's the good of dying intentionally, of sacrificing yourself to the idea you want people to have of you? Once you're dead, they will take advantage of it to attribute idiotic or vulgar motives to your action. Martyrs, cher me, must choose between being forgotten, mocked, or made use of. As for being understood, never. Besides, let's not beat about the bush. I love life. That's my real weakness. I love it so much that I am incapable of imagining what is not life. Such avidity has something plebeian about it, don't you think? Aristocracy cannot imagine itself without a little distance surrounding itself and its own life. One dies if necessary, one breaks rather than bending. But I bend because I continue to love myself. For example, after all I have told you, what do you think I developed? An aversion for myself? Come, it was mostly with others that I was fed up. To be sure, I knew my failings and regretted them. Yet I continued to forget them with a rather meritorious obstinacy. The prosecution of others, on the contrary, went on constantly in my heart. Of course, does that shock you? Maybe you think it's not logical. But the question is not how to remain logical. The question is how to slip through. And above all, the question is how to elude judgment. I'm not saying to avoid punishment, for punishment without judgment is bearable. It has a name, besides, that guarantees our innocence. It is called misfortune. No, on the contrary, it is a matter of dodging judgment, of avoiding being forever judged without ever having a sentence pronounced. But one can't dodge it so easily. Today we're always as ready to judge as we are to fornicate, with this difference that there are no inadequacies to fear. If you doubt this, just listen to the table conversation during August in those summer hotels where our charitable fellow citizens take their cure for boredom. If you still hesitate to come to a conclusion, read the writings of our great men of the moment, or else observe your own family. You'll learn a thing or two. Mon cher ami, let's not give them any pretext, no matter how small, for judging us. Otherwise we'll be left in shreds. We're forced to take the same precautions as the lion tamer. If before going into the cage he has the misfortune to cut himself while shaving, what a feast for the animals. I realised this all of a sudden the day I began to suspect that maybe I wasn't so admirable. From then on I became mistrustful. Since I was bleeding slightly, there was no escape for me. They would devour me. My relations with my contemporaries were apparently the same, and yet subtly out of tune. My friends hadn't changed. On occasion they still extolled the harmony and security they found in my company, but I was aware only of the dissonances and disorder that filled me. I felt vulnerable, and as if I were handed over to public accusation. In my eyes, my fellows ceased to be the respectful public to which I was accustomed. The circle of which I was the centre broke, and they lined up in a row as on the judge's bench. The moment I grasped that there was something to judge in me, I realised that in fact they had an irresistible vocation for judgment. Yes, they were there as before, but they were laughing. Or rather, it seemed to me that every one of them that I met was looking at me with a hidden smile. I even had the impression at that time that people were tripping me up. 2 or 3 times, in fact, I stumbled as I entered public places. Once even I went sprawling on the floor. The Cartesian Frenchman in me didn't take long to catch hold of himself and attribute those accidents to the only reasonable divinity, that is, chance. Nonetheless, my distrust remained. Once my attention was aroused, it was not hard for me to discover that I had enemies. In my profession, to begin with, and also in my social life. Some among them I had obliged, others I should have obliged. All that, after all, was natural, and I discovered that without too much grief. It was harder and more painful, on the other hand, to admit that I had enemies among people I hardly knew or didn't know at all. I had always thought, with the ingenuousness I have already illustrated to you, that those who didn't know me couldn't resist liking me if they came to know me. Not at all. I encountered hostility, especially among those who knew me only at a distance, without my knowing them myself. Doubtless they suspected me of living fully and being up completely to happiness, and that cannot be forgiven. The look of success, when it is worn in a certain way, would infuriate a jackass. Then again, my life was full to bursting, and for lack of time I used to refuse many advances. Then I would forget my refusals, for the same reason. But those advances had been made to me by people whose life was not full, and who, for that very reason, would remember my refusals.